Do you still have that Goonies II NES music stuck in your head like me? Then you're gonna love the secrets, history, and strategies I'm gonna share in this video. So grab a baby Ruth, practice your best truffle shuffle, and let's get started. If this is your first time here at the channel, my name is Tyler, and if you love gaming from all generations like we do here at G3, then consider hitting that subscribe button and hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss anything. There was something almost magical about renting a video game on Friday night back in the day at your local video store. There was one game that for whatever reason I was never able to find to buy in a store, but I rented it at least 10 times because my cousins and I would have so much fun playing it. And that was the Konami classic Goonies II on the NES. Even though we didn't really have a clue what was going on and we didn't have a manual since we rented the game, we all enjoyed taking turns trying to take down the Fratellis. Like most 80s kids, my cousins and I were all fans of the Goonies movie, and we just assumed the game was called Goonies II because it was a sequel to the events that took place in the movie. And I didn't find out until a few months ago that Goonies II was actually a sequel to an original Goonies game that was only released in Japan for the Famicom back in 1986. But you could still find it in North America in the arcades on PlayChoice 10 machines, but I never got a chance to see it. Goonies on the Famicom was developed by Konami as well, and it's an arcade-style platformer where you control Mikey Walsh, the main character from the movie, and make your way through different stages that closely follow the film, like the caves, the Fratelli's restaurant, and of course One-Eyed Willie's pirate ship. And there are some fun elements that tie in with the film too, like the earmuffs you can find to protect Mikey from the music notes that Jake Fratelli lets out, just like he sings all those opera songs in the movie. It really doesn't have the same depth of Goonies 2, but it's still a fun game to try out, and you can find the Famicom game pretty cheap on eBay in case you want to pick one up yourself. And the Famicom version was just one of many Goonies games released on multiple platforms that I'd never heard of. But the early Goonies game I found the most interesting was a PC game released by Datasoft for computers like the Commodore 64 and Apple II. It debuted in the winter of '85, which was the same year the movie released. What's unique about this game is that you take turns controlling two of the Goonies in each level, so you have to rely on teamwork to make it through, just like the movie. There's a lot of strategy and puzzle solving involved, and it's much more fun than I would have imagined for an '85 PC game. And you even get to play as Sloth, so if you get a chance, give this one a try. Now that we know the real reason this game is called Goonies 2, let's dive right into its facts and history. Goonies 2 was developed by Konami and released for the Famicom in Japan on March 18, 1987, and on the NES in North America in November 1987, and in Europe in December of the same year. The game title was slightly different in the Japanese version as well, which is translated as Goonies 2, The Fratelli's Last Stand. This game takes place after the events in the movie, and the Fratellis are out of prison and have kidnapped 6 of the Goonies and Annie the Mermaid, who is apparently now best buds with all the Goonies. You're once again in control of Mikey and must make your way through the Fratellis' hideout and rescue all your friends and put the Fratellis away for good. And is it just me, or does the way Mama Fratelli's mouth moves in the intro look just like the Cadbury bunny in that old school Cadbury egg commercial? Goonies 2 follows a Metroidvania style pattern with a mix of platforming and backtracking through a maze-like hideout and first-person navigation through adventure scenes, which remind me of cabins in the Friday the 13th NES game, with various commands and special tools you collect to interact with the room and people you meet. Goonies 2 wasn't really loved by the critics in the beginning, but it seems to have struck a chord in NES fans, and in 1997 Nintendo Power ranked this game 87th in its top 100 best games of all time list. And did you know Goonies 2 actually made a quick cameo in a Steve Martin movie back in 1990? It's in the crime comedy movie called My Blue Heaven, and you have to be looking pretty closely to find it. Some undercover agents are sitting around in a motel room, and one of them is playing the NES, and it's clear to see that he's playing Goonies 2. But what's strange is the sounds of the game are from Pac-Man on the Atari 2600, which I really don't understand. And look at the way that dude's holding that NES controller. Now let's talk about what makes this game so unforgettable and nostalgic for me, and that is the soundtrack for Goonies 2. This music is absolutely perfect. Konami always delivers when it comes to NES music, and they are definitely at the top of their game here. The 8-bit cover of the Cyndi Lauper hit Goonies Are Good Enough entrances you right from the beginning of the game. The soundtrack was composed by a mysterious and masterful Konami artist named Satoe Terashima, and please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Konami had a strict policy during the days of the NES for secrecy of the actual names of the developers and composers, in fear that rival companies would try to lure them away. This meant they mostly used aliases or they didn't get any credit at all. Apparently you can't even find a real picture of Hiroshima on the internet, and she's responsible for some of the most memorable music on the NES, like the Castlevania series and Life Force. I personally would like to thank her for her hard work and for helping to bring life to this otherwise quirky and very frustrating at times Konami title. Let's talk about the manual and try to get a better feel for the gameplay. Now I'm going to be honest and say that the manual included with Goonies 2 leaves a lot to be desired. First off, it's not even in color, which just sets a bad tone to start with. Then the artwork for the characters just doesn't seem up to par with the quality you would expect from Konami during the 80s. These characters look like they would be more at home in a Schoolhouse Rock video if you asked me. Now don't get me wrong, there are some good sections in the manual. It gives a good general explanation of how to control Mikey and the two main types of screens you encounter in the game. The first is the side-scrolling platforming sections of the game called the action scenes, which are for the most part pretty standard for an NES-style platformer with both primary and sub-weapon options, which feel a lot like the Castlevania series. The second type of screens you experience are called adventure scenes, and are the first-person view screens you use to meet characters that help you in your journey, and you use some pretty off-the-wall methods to find hidden doors and crucial items needed to save everyone. Okay, so here are some pro tips that will actually save you a ton of time in the adventure scenes. You will quickly realize that most of the rooms in the first-person view are not exactly what they seem. Most empty rooms have a hidden item, door, or safe that you need to find a way to reveal. This can lead to some tedious banging on the walls and ceilings with your fist, your hammer, looking with your magic glasses, etc. Just use the pattern I'm about to tell you if you think something may be hidden in a room, and you will definitely not have missed anything. Number 1. Hit the back wall with your fist. Number 2. Hit the ceiling and floor with your hammer to see if there's a hidden opening. Number 3. Hit the back wall with your hammer if the room doesn't have a door. And number 4. Use your glasses. If you use this pattern in an empty room and you don't reveal anything, then it's safe to say it's really empty. The other screen the manual discusses is called the Auxilary Screen, which is basically a sub-screen you access when you press start. This displays the items you've acquired in the upper right corner called magic implements, and the amount of items you can find in this game is pretty overwhelming. There are actually 17 items hidden in Goonies 2 for you to find, and I definitely recommend getting either a physical or PDF version of the manual and reading up on what all the items are used for, because it would take way too long to go over all of them for this video. Now here's another pro tip. There are 4 items that must be collected in the game if you want to be able to explore every part of the hideout. And they are the hammer, the magic glasses, the diving suit which you use to access water-based areas, and the ladder. On the left side of the screen you can toggle between what primary and sub-weapon you would like to equip for the action scenes. The primary weapon you begin the game with is the yo-yo, and from all my research I believe this was actually the first game that used the yo-yo as a primary weapon, which has been used quite a bit with video game heroes in future classics, like Ness in the Earthbound series and the main character in Star Tropics, who ironically is named Mike as well. But my favorite primary weapon in the game is the Boomerang, which you can find here in this door located in the bottom right corner of the ice levels. Remember this location too, because if you get hit by the flying heads while crossing the bridge, they will steal your boomerang. But don't worry, because there always will be another one waiting for you in the same location you found one if you need it. The boomerang is my favorite because it can do both short and long range attacks, and you can fire it in multiple directions, and even attack tougher enemies from different levels where they can't reach you. One fun little Easter egg in the weapons section of the manual is the artwork for the harpoon you use in the water stages. I mean, doesn't it look just like an NES zapper with a harpoon dart for a barrel? The sub-weapons are very powerful too, and they consist of bombs and Molotov cocktails. Another pro tip is that there are some really powerful enemies near the end of the game that seem to take forever to beat with the yo-yo or boomerang, but they'll die in 1 or 2 hits with a bomb or a cocktail. So always make sure to grab bomb boxes or fire boxes whenever you come across them to keep Mikey stocked up with these critical weapons. An invaluable time-saving secret in Goonies 2 can only be found by precisely placing one of your bombs in this exact location on the left-hand side of the suspension bridge. This will give you early access to the hyper shoes, which otherwise you can't get until near the end of the game, and you have to use one of your precious keys to get the shoes out of a safe, so make sure to take advantage of this. And while we're talking about safes in the game, don't make the mistake of wasting your keys on safes that are already present in a room without having to hit anything or wear glasses to see it. Any safe that is readily available as soon as you walk in the room will only have a secret message, which doesn't really help you advance in the game. So only use that key if you secretly revealed the safe yourself, and you'll be rewarded with an item you truly need. Now, many of you watching probably played this game back in the day like me and know how difficult and confusing this game can be. I'm not ashamed to admit that I never could even come close to finishing this game when I was a kid, because there are just too many unbelievably cryptic things you have to do to make it through this game, like having to randomly hit an old lady in the face 5 times in order to get a candle so you can see in the dark areas of the game. I'm not kidding. With that being said, it's near impossible to beat this game without a guide. And I wasn't aware of the guide I'm about to share with you until I was an adult. And trust me, this book is essential to mastering Goonies 2. I'm talking about the official Nintendo Player's Guide. This book was first released back in 1987 and features a complete review of over 90 classic NES games. And you can find it pretty cheap on eBay. Or you could Google a PDF version, but I think it's much better to have a physical copy to flip back and forth easily. It's not a step-by-step playthrough, but it helps answer many of the questions the manual didn't clarify, like giving you a great visual representation of how the extremely confusing front and back map system is actually laid out in the game. And trying to find all 6 Goonies and Annie is really tough to do on your own, but the guidebook helps steer you in the right direction of the next Goonie you need to save without exactly doing it for you. Seriously, this guidebook is a requirement for the game. Study it, memorize it, tuck it in bed at night. Well, maybe that's taking it a bit far, but for real, don't try to tackle Goonies 2 without it. It was also fun to meet all the quirky characters like the Eskimo, who was basically the equivalent of I Am Error from Zelda 2, the Fishman who would give you jumping shoes and extra lives, and the most bizarre and my personal favorite of all these characters was Konami Man. Konami Man is located in multiple adventure scenes throughout the map, like at this location hidden under the waterfall in the Red Cavern. Konami Man will immediately refill you to max health anytime you visit. So whenever you find him, write that location down for sure. But don't try to be funny and hit Konami Man with your fist or a hammer, or he'll never refill your health throughout the game. But who exactly is Konami Man? He is a superhero-themed mascot for the company that makes little cameos in many Konami titles. Konami Man actually got his own Japanese game for the Famicom back in 1988, which is a platformer similar in style to Castlevania, where you can play as Konami Man, Konami Lady, and 6 other popular Konami main characters like Simon Belmont from the Castlevania series, King Kong, and you guessed it, even Mikey from the Goonies. You think it'd be safe to call Konami Man the ambassador for the company, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because there's another hidden character in Goonies 2 named Ambassador Konami you find near the end of the game. He's pretty worthless too, because he only gives you a clue that you need to save all 6 Goonies before you can save Annie. Thanks for telling us this when the game's almost over, dude. Strong work. So feel free to hit him with that hammer as much as you like. Now that we've covered some of the friendly characters, let's talk about the enemies. You have a bunch of random generic enemies scattered throughout the game that really don't serve any purpose, but I do enjoy the artwork and odd names they give the enemies, which is very similar to Zelda. Like a bat is called a Happy, spiders are named Net, and a shark is called a Gamby. You could tell they were getting a little less creative by the end of naming all these things, because a ghost is called a Ghosty and a snake is named Snakey. And the best one of all is the Crow, which they call a Crow. Keep it simple, I like it. Now the main human enemies in the game are the Fratellis, which consist of the 2 brothers from the movie, Jake and Francis, a new smaller henchman named Pipsqueak, and the leader of the gang, Mama Fratelli. You'll find the 3 male Fratelli scattered throughout the game, and you only encounter Mama Fratelli in the attic of the hideout not long before you save Annie and beat the game. The Fratellis cannot actually be killed, they can only be stunned. I was disappointed to find that there wasn't a real final boss fight with Mama Fratelli before you rescue Annie. I actually almost missed seeing Mama Fratelli on my way to rescue Annie, and it wasn't very hard to get away from her. It was such an awesome experience to finally make it through this game with the help of the Nintendo Player's Guide. It gives the gameplay an authentic Goonies feel to it, because it's basically an 8-page treasure map to help you beat the game. It felt great to finally find and rescue all the Goonies and Annie the Mermaid. Goonies 2 is such a complex game, it would be completely overwhelming to give you a step-by-step tutorial in one video, and I've tried my best to give you some fun Easter eggs and my most helpful hints if you want to try to beat this game yourself, and I hope you enjoyed watching. Make sure to leave a comment about some of your favorite Goonies 2 memories. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with any of your friends who love Goonies 2 or any other retro adventure games. And congratulations to RD400D78 for being the first to find Mullet Boy in our last video. Strong work, dude, and Jay the NES addict was just about 30 seconds behind him, so I'll give him a shout out too. Don't forget that Mullet Boy is hiding in this video too, and the first one to find him in the comments will get a shout out in our next video. Till next time, guys, G3 out.